studying on that a little bit.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I want to welcome you all to the regularly scheduled council meeting for the governing body of Spring Hill, Kansas on Thursday, October 24th, 2024. We have Pastor Jay Sloan here with Believe Church to do the invocation. If you guys could stand with me if you are able.
Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for this day. I pray that you will guide this meeting. Give us your mind, your wisdom as we make decisions. Be with our leaders. Give them discernment. Give them patience. Father, we do pray especially for our country now and through this election process, whatever side of the line that we're on, that we will still seek you through this time. Lord, we just put our country, our county, our city into your hands and trust you with it. Thank you. I pray you bless this town commercially, economically. Father, I do pray for our leaders specifically that you will just put your protection upon them and give them strong hearts and good health. And Father, I just pray that you be with this evening and it's productive and effective. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Deputy Madam Clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Ms. Feback? Here. Mr. Peel?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mr. Grant?
Here.
Mr. Van Houten?
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. We did have a request to move discussion item number 10 to before citizen participation. But other than that, are there any other questions or comments? If not, I entertain a motion to approve agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion to second. Is there any further discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0-0. Next, we'll move on to a discussion item, and it's Miami County sales tax. Sorry, we have Tyler here with Miami County. He's going to make a presentation, but I believe Mrs. Feback would like to speak before that.
Yeah. First of all, Commissioner, thank you for coming. I was the one that requested you to come. Basically, the commissioners here, Miami County commissioners here to talk about the sales tax that's going to be on the ballot November 5th. I'm a Miami County resident and I'm curious to know a little bit more about it as well. So this is just more of an educational thing. So anyway, go ahead, Commissioner. Thank you.
Tyler Vaughn with Miami County. Sorry, I didn't say your last name right.
No, you're fine. Thank you very much. Appreciate the invite for sure. And thank you for moving me to the front of the meeting. So I appreciate that too. I did provide a few documents for you guys to review. And I'm really passionate about this particular topic. And I know anytime we talk about taxation, there's always some type of question as to what is it, one, how is it going to affect me, two, and then what are you going to use the tax for? So the first thing to really understand about the quarter-cent sales tax, it has to be on the ballot every 5 years for renewal inside of Miami County. So this is not a new tax. It's a renewal of an existing tax that's been in place since 2001. So it's been in place for 25 years. And we actually lobbied the state back in 2000. Gene Vickery, who's now on the Miami County Commission, helped at the state to get this approved for Miami County to put on the ballot and for the people of Miami County to be allowed to vote yes or no to it. And at that point, what we used it for was to focus on large bridge infrastructure. So the problem that we have in Miami County is our tax base is really on the back of our residents. It's no secret we don't have a ton of commercial and industrial tax base to be diversified. So we have to be pretty creative on how we're gonna do large projects. Because we can't come and say, if any of you have been in Spring Hill for a long time and remember before that overpass got put on 223rd, and you'd be stuck there on a main thoroughfare through Spring Hill, and you'd be stuck when BNSF decided to park their trains there for 3.5 hours. So, and you'd have to drive around town. The quarter-cent sales tax actually paid for that overpass to be put in. So we use it for substantial projects. So what I've provided to you, the first thing that you're gonna see is just the history on sales tax itself. So in 2001, a cumulative sales tax of 508,000 is what we were able to collect and utilize. Fast forward that to this year, we've collected close to 1.3 million. So almost tripled, right? And you looked at years before, after COVID, our sales tax exploded. Because we had a lot of folks who weren't leaving Miami County to shop, they were shopping in Miami County, and that's continued, we continue to see that to this day. Excuse me. So this provides a substantial amount of money into Miami County to do meaningful projects, and a lot of those projects have been done right here in Spring Hill on the Miami County side, but also all throughout the county. So it's for the betterment of the county, and this is a county-wide sales tax that's in place. So if you go to Price Chopper, 25 cents of the $100 that you're spending goes into this tax, and it has for the last 25 years. So this is on the ballot this year for renewal from 2026 through 2031 would be the next 5 years that's on there. And what's really important is to understand what projects have been done. So the next one that's up here, I think this clicker works, or if Amy will put up the next slide, shows some of the substantial projects that we were able to accomplish with this. One of the cool things to look at is at the second page at the very bottom of this, it shows that the quarter-cent sales tax over this time has produced 21 million, keep going down, Amy, just a little bit, there you go, $21,263,000 into Miami County. But what's even more impressive is by using that money, we're able to get alternate funding through MARC, KDOT, grants, and you can see that produced 18.6 million. So not just has the sales tax produced the 21 million, it's actually gotten us an additional 18.5 million that's not on the backs of our residents through grant dollars and other things, because we're able to have that funding there to show up to the table to do matching grants. So when you look at some of these projects in here, you're gonna see 223rd Street all over the place because, as we all know, I know the mayor and Lane and several of the council members, I've talked about this, you have limited things that you can do on the Miami County side, right? Because you have a large portion in Johnson County, you have a limited portion in Miami County. So 223rd is really the low-hanging fruit for any substantial project. So you can see we've accomplished several projects on 223rd, being the Webster Street intersection, the study around there, 223rd Street improvements. And for this next sales tax, if you could go to the next slide, for the future goal use of this, I've really advocated and allocated a lot of money to 223rd. And 223rd for repair all along the corridor itself, and then specifically a study that partners with some of the things that you're working on in that Columbia Road to Victory Road standpoint as well, is where we would really like to do it. So the one point that I didn't bring up is inside of this tax, we don't have to, but the last 3 times we've gotten this approved, we've decided that we're gonna share $500,000 with the city of that tax for a substantial project. So just recently, Spring Hill actually used 2 of the 5-year periods, so 2 $500,000 pieces, to generate $1 million that went into road infrastructure this year with the mill and overlay that you did and some other road projects. You used 800,000 of that, and you have 200,000 still left to use of the current quarter-cent sales tax. If this were to get approved on the ballot in November, you would have an additional 500,000 that would start in 2026 that would be available for a project. But I do want to point out, it is not written in there at all that's a thing that's more of a spit and handshake with all the cities that we've done and produced, but it's not actually in the language. But we are committing that in here. We're stating that we're committing to the city. So it is in for the future 5 years in this sales tax. So obviously I can't tell people how to vote, but I would love people to show up and vote. And I hope this provides enough information to make an educated decision as to what's on the ballot. Do you have any questions?
And when you say 500 to the city, that's kind of like a benchmark, right? It's not necessarily, it could be more than that if we have a good project that the county really is in support of, or is that kind of just a?
We are committing 500,000. If you came to Miami County with a substantial project that made a lot of sense, we would consider more funding.
Okay,
But it's a guaranteed 500,000 as long as it's an approved project. So I do want to really point that out. It's a
Yeah.
coordination with Miami County to say, hey, this is a substantial project. We won't pay any money until the project's 90% complete. Then we'll pay out the money.
it's almost like a similar version of the CARS program.
It is.
Smaller
Yep.
scale.
Yeah, very similar. Very similar. But it's very important to understand, if you read the language.
It's not in the
It's
technical
not in the text of the language. Technically, this is Miami County sales tax money.
Yeah.
That we can determine how it's utilized, but we are stating in the renewal that we are committing the 500,000 to each city. And we actually added 50,000 for Fontana because they actually do have a mayor and city council. So they are a defined city, they're not a township inside of Miami County, so we decided to allocate some money to them this round as well.
If we had a approved project or eligible project early on in that 5 years, would we be able to use the 500 all early, or do we need to wait the full 5 years to
No,
get the full?
you can put that in front of us and we can determine, if it meets all the guidelines and you guys have it lined up, we'll absolutely have that allocated. So what we do is we can have that money around and we'll make sure and ditch it out of there evenly to each person. And then, as we go through the 5 years, we're collecting that money. It's really done some substantial work in Miami County that we never would have been able to got done without it. So, I mean, it would be detrimental. When you look at our total road and bridge budget just for maintenance is right around $7 to $8 million, and that's covering maintenance salaries and all of that. When you're generating out of this, what we're estimating 1.3 to 1.4 million for additional projects, like that's a huge thing for Miami County to be able to do. And a lot of people ask, well, if you don't get the sales tax, are you just gonna put it on, put it into the property tax? No, we just aren't gonna do the project, right? We just aren't gonna do anything additional than the maintenance. So I think that's really important to understand, because we've heard, well, you're gonna threaten us by putting this back onto our property tax, and it's not a threat, it's just a reality that if we don't have this to be able to fund some larger projects, we just aren't gonna do the larger projects, because we don't have an appetite to put that back on property taxes. I think we all realize that.
And your ROI is almost double, right? So you're putting in 21 million over 25 years, but you're getting almost 19 million, 18.5 million from other government.
And that's actually the biggest point of
That's
this.
what I was gonna say, is that's the
Yeah.
biggest plus on this.
It really is.
Grant funding that we've been able
Yeah.
to get, because there's no way, without those matching funds, there's no way you would have been
No
able to
way.
get any of that money.
Well, if you think about what we did in Lewisburg, it's called Lewisburg 3.0. I call it like 10.0 because there's a whole bunch of different versions of it, but whatever. That was ended up being like a $4.5 million project that Lewisburg used their 500,000 towards. Miami County used about 500,000 as well of our own money that we matched into the program. So that's $1 million that got a $4 million some project done. That was a substantial project that never would have happened had we not had that money to put up on the table. And the same thing with 223rd, that 223rd corridor, if we don't have matching funds and a way to go before KDOT and everything else that we have to do as a partnership with the city, yourselves, and us in Miami County, if we don't have that fund to do it, we're dead in the water whenever we show up to KDOT or Mark, because they're looking at us saying, you gotta participate, you gotta pay to play. And if we don't have the money to do that, we're kinda out, they move along.
Is the majority of that 18, 19 million coming from KDOT or other?
KDOT matching grants and Mark are the main
Are the big
things.
ones.
Yeah, and we're really focused in the coming years on how we can get better access to grants by using grant writers. And as you know, I mean, since COVID, the name of the game is grabbing all the Fed money that they're throwing around. So we're trying to figure out how to do that too. And good, bad, or ugly, the reality is if you're not at the table fighting for it, some other community's getting
Yeah,
it.
it's gonna go somewhere.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like, let's all be against the grants, because, it's not the way we like to do business. it's our money.
We're
paying for it either way.
Somebody's getting it, yeah. So we might as well have our hat in the ring. So this allows us a seat at the table for a lot of that. And, again, from a Miami County perspective, you know, you're one of several cities inside of the county. We love the partnership that we have with you in doing that and the coordination. And this just allows us to be able to really highlight that and do more work, so.
Well, I think the biggest thing in it is just to remember it's not a new sales tax. You know,
Yeah.
we're not trying to raise anybody's taxes. It's something that's been there for 25 years. So
100%. It's a
something
renewal.
that's gonna go up, you know, off of what it is now.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a renewal of, and it's been in place for 25 years. Okay?
Any other questions or comments?
I have one. Thank you for coming. And I had a great conversation with the commissioner, and we talked about him coming once every 6 months to city council just to give updates in the county for Miami County, as well as Lane going every 6 months to the county commissioner meeting and updating them on what's going on in our city. So I just think collaboration is really important, and we're going to start doing.
100%. I love that and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you guys
you.
very much. Appreciate it.
All right, next we'll move on to citizen participation. This is a time when the public can come and speak about whatever they would like to talk about. We just ask if you do that you state your name and your address. We did not have anyone sign up on the list, but if there's anyone in the audience that would like to, now would be your time. Pretty quiet. All right, if no one would like to, we'll go ahead and close citizen participation at this time and move on to the consent agenda. These are items that the staff considers to be routine maintenance, but if there are any questions or comments on that, now would be the time. If not, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0-0. Next, we'll move on to formal council action. First item on the agenda is consider approval of ordinance number 2024 what's that number? What? 15. Sorry, it's not on my sheet. 2024-15 rezoning application Z-24-7 from RP1 to R2, and it's at 216th Street and Lone Elm Road. And we have Doug with Phelps Engineering here, or Mr. Burton.
Thank you. Good evening. How's everyone tonight? So what we have is the formal action. This was looked at by the planning commission. And it's a 25 plus minus that is existing RP1 single family to an RP2 district. On October 3rd, the planning commission voted unanimously to approve this rezoning. And it's an existing subdivision that's been in play for 20 years, and it's finally starting to final out their phases. This is really the final phase of Oakwood, and they think that it'd be better utilized for multifamily, or two-family is what it is. So, is there any questions?
I mean, I drove by there tonight. I know in the planning commission meeting, they talked a lot about kind of the parking on 216th Street. But it looks like, and this was my question now looking at it, but Lone Elm looks like it could be a decent access point for maybe construction traffic. I don't have any problem with the zoning, I'm just talking about in the future, something to think about there, and then along, even permanently, that 216th Street looks like a spot where we might want to say one side parking only. 'Cause
Okay,
it's
we're looking into that.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the final plat will be before you before too long, and hopefully we'll have a good grasp on the two subdivisions working together. We actually have another one that's getting ready to start now by the Aquatic Center.
Yeah.
And I think November 1st is their date, something like that, to start. And we'll work together with them and see if we can't get some construction entrances.
But I just wanted to address those two things because those are that seem to be the two issues. But other than that, I think it's, it's right next to the highway. That's where multifamily goes, and duplexes are probably the best of multifamily you can get when you're in single family, so.
Yep, and there's already some duplexes
You know.
over in that area, so.
Yeah, we think it's a very good.
And it didn't sound like a huge increase, it was like, what, 40?
Yes.
Doors from the RP1 to R2.
Yeah.
It wasn't much, so.
Are there still plans to connect? I know it's another piece there as well. But, originally there were plans to connect Lone Elm all the way over to the road coming in by the aquatic center. Is that still?
That's correct. There is one part in there and we're still working on that.
Because I know that
When the
would help with
aquatic
traffic
center went
flow.
in, that was a, the city was gonna do that connection. And it never happened.
We need to get another
And-
way into that.
I say that makes sense, just.
But
continue.
there's a connecting link that's gonna go in,
Yeah,
with the, Maplewood Valley. And then the aquatic center drive there, yes, it was supposed to be connected with the construction of the aquatic center, but
on our side or on their side?
the way I understand it, the city was going to pay to have
Okay.
that connected. There was a small strip in there. And I don't know if you guys remember, but Oakwoods, the streets and all sat there forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deleted.
Yeah, a long time.
And then that connection link was always supposed to be put in, but they never started Oakwood.
And so we didn't put it in.
So we just never did do it.
It's not a very far distance either.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
But it would make a lot of sense to have.
It makes all the sense in the
North
world.
and south there and be able to access it.
But you can even see there's a little piece of Sycamore that goes east-west.
That's correct.
Off of Franklin, and Sycamore is what the aquatic center's on.
Yep.
And it almost lines up perfectly with Lone Elm if you extend it down.
It does.
towards the highway. So
Yeah, it was
it's almost a
designed
straight
that way.
line.
Yes.
And does 217th go all the way through?
I can't
Yeah, I
visualize.
don't, not yet, but it looks like it's probably eventually going to.
Does it show, yeah, I think it
Where it cuts
does
off,
with
it's
the
hard to
next.
see right behind the bus barn.
No, I don't believe
Is that
it
dead
does
end?
go. No, because I think a group owns that. Isn't there like a Masonic Lodge or something there?
Yeah, I believe so.
But
Oh, yeah.
something like that. And there had been talk with, or maybe it's a VA, anyway, someone owns that right there, that lodge. And there'd been talk years ago about doing something like that. But then it made more sense to go back up and connect up by the aquatic center
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
and work their way through those subdivisions.
A lot to work through, but I mean, for zoning, I think we're fine.
Yeah, and this will all be, hopefully we'll have some answers and obviously it'll be spelled out with the final plat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're at a rezoning right now.
sounds good.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think it's good finishing. I like seeing projects finished, so I know it's been started for, I remember when you said, I remember back when it was just roads sitting
yeah.
there. I remember driving back through there and looking at the empty roads and
Yeah,
being a
went through a lot of
construction guy, I was like,
developers.
man, this is crazy.
Went through a lot of developers.
Yeah.
And across the street to the north was all the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It all happened real quick.
yeah, it all fell apart real quick.
All right.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I entertain a motion.
All right, move to approve ordinance number 2024-15 for rezoning application Z 24-7 from RP1 to RP2, or R2.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, Deputy Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Van Houten,
Yes.
Ms. Feback,
Yes.
Mr. Peel,
Yes.
Mayor Berkey.
Yes.
Motion passes, or ordinance passes 6-0-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Next item on the agenda is consider approval of charter ordinance number 41, a charter ordinance relating to vacancies in the office of mayor and council members. And Mr. Lau, you have the floor.
Maybe if I plug into this. Okay. All right, so I have the long-awaited charter ordinance regarding filling vacancies. The ordinance itself is in your packet. It is pretty verbose because I have never been good at writing short things, but this is one that we need to be a little more detailed on. So what I went ahead and did was made a couple flow charts for everybody to have a more simplified version. filling mayor vacancies is going to be pretty straightforward. It's actually even more straightforward than this. Whenever it occurs, it's going to just be filled until the next regular election. If that was before February 1st. At your next regular election, you'll have a 4-year term. So the one downside to this is this could cause offsets in your 3 and 3 every election.
Okay.
So
That was my question, could it produce a 4 and 2?
it could, yes. The language is already in your charter ordinance. We could do the exact same that we do for city council, which is slightly more complicated. So any vacancy that occurs before February 1st of your midterm election year will be filled until that next regular election. At that next regular election, the seat that's filled is up for a special 2-year term. So your ballot, everyone out there listening, will have 3 regularly scheduled city council seats or 2 and a mayor, and then 1, and those will be at large, the 5 or 10 or however many people running for it to those top 3 to those. There will be 1 that's just up for a 2-year term. So we'll have to make sure we're educating people a little bit if that happens. The person who's appointed is only allowed to run for that 2-year term if they want to stay on. So they can't get appointed, serve for a year, and then say, hey, I really love this. I'm going to jump straight into a 4-year term. We want them to stick with that 2 years so this isn't like a stepping stone for super ambitious people. Although we love ambitious people and want someone to come serve with us. But that's the phase there. And then we're back on our regularly scheduled elections. That seats back up for a full 4-year term the next time at the end of the original term. If the vacancy occurs after February 1 of that midterm year, it just gets filled until the end of the original term. And as we discussed, that February 1 date reflects a May 1 deadline for us to kind of have our ballots finalized. So we want to give people a few months if they're considering whether they want to be appointed or whether they want to run for that 2-year spot against the person who is appointed. We want to make sure there's enough cushion there so that they don't have 3 days to go decide, oh, I want to run, I got to file right now. That's our general setup. If you would like the mayor to look just like this, we can. The downside of doing that is whoever you choose to be council president is facing the possibility of having to take over for a mayor and then essentially get kicked out early and have to run again, which is fine. The goal of this was we want more people, more elections for these vacancies, but that is the downside. There's a chance that people might not want to be council president because of it. There's a chance that I have no idea what I'm talking about there, and it's not going to affect people's desires anyway. So that is up to you all, because I never have a chance to be council president up there, but you guys do, so you have some insight on that thought process. If you'd like me to change this and come back at our next meeting on this, it's not the 7th, is it? 14th. We can come back on the 14th. Charter ordinances take a long time to go into effect. We have to publish it twice, 1 week apart, and then it takes effect 61 days after that second publication. So you're bringing it back in a few weeks, but it's going to push back the effective date from early January to middle of January.
And so if a position comes open prior to the effective date, then this wouldn't be.
Correct. We would do it the way we've been doing it, which is that it's filled until the remainder of that seat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily worried about the mayor portion because they're still coming up for the vote and it goes to 4 and 2, and I don't really think that really matters as much. So that part doesn't bother me. I do like March 1st better, but I wasn't here last meeting to talk about that, so you guys made that decision, that's fine. But other than that, I don't really have any issues with it. I will say it doesn't change any way that the appointments happen, still the same process.
Still the same process. Yeah. The one thing it does put into the charter, so right now, our bylaws say that if there's a tie, the mayor casts the tie-breaking vote for their own appointment. That's the way the code already reads. I went ahead and put that in the charter to make it all, again, the goal of this was just put everything in one place.
And then
One
then
kind
the
of
mayor
spot.
has appointing.
So the mayor appoints, the
not like
remaining
council
council members vote on that. There's usually 4 remaining council members unless
Yeah.
we have multiple vacancies. So if it's a 2-2, the mayor would break that tie,
Okay.
which is the way that already works.
Yeah.
And if it didn't work,
Yeah.
we're kind of back to square one on things. So
I think if everything else is, this to me looks like it fixes a lot of the issues we've had in the past. And
Right.
what's funny is we're fixing it and it probably won't happen again for a while. But I think there's a peace of mind to it that, going forward,
Well, I think we all.
it's a lot clearer than it
I
was.
think we all felt like we needed to do something
Yeah.
and make it at least more clear to everyone out there. and clearer on paper because there was so many different ordinances that
Yeah.
it was real hard to decipher.
So yeah, when this goes into effect, 61 days after our second publication, we will bring back to you some changes to our general city code that already kind of conflict with charters, and they will definitely conflict with this. For the record, the charter ordinance will always trump city code, so we don't have to change those, but we're going to because there's no reason to have
Yeah, to
conflicting
have
code with charter,
conflicting,
so.
No
But
confusion.
yeah, we'll bring that back, so again, it'll just either say refer to Charter 41, or we'll just copy and paste what 41 says, so that it is a word for word wherever somebody looks. Because it can be easier to find your city code online than charter ordinances, and we want people to be able to find this, so.
So if this is approved today, when does it go into effect?
Do you know when our publication days are?
Wednesdays.
October 30th and November 6th.
Okay, so roughly 2 months after November 6th would be January, like
January
8th, 9th, 10th, something
Oh,
like
okay,
that.
so, okay.
Just in time for people to be tired of the concept of elections.
I don't love the potential of the 4-2 split, but I think it's a rare occurrence. There is a very rare chance that that could happen, and there's no way for us to write this where we're gonna eliminate all bad possibilities. So I'm in favor of this.
Yeah, and again, that's something, if you get into a 4-2 split and you have an election or two and it just feels lopsided, charter ordinances are not written in stone. So same process we're doing this, 2/3 vote, you can go change that to have it be the same process as city council, so.
Yeah. I am glad that we didn't add in the military one because I do think that's just part of, unfortunately, if you're,
Yeah.
Get called to service and that's part of it, then you can't be here, you can't really do the job. So it's not really good for the city to have, you'd have to add in a bunch of things like, oh, the council president can do this. And so it just
Right.
becomes a lot dirtier. But, so I think this is cleaner. It's a lot easier to understand. I prefer this, so.
I also really like the detail of the appointed person can only run for the 2-year spot. So you basically can only run to fill the remainder of your spot, which is the exact same thing we were trying to resolve.
And it makes sense too.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
Yeah, that makes great sense.
Yeah, I will say the other subtle change that's in this, which is something I think never would have come up, but we went ahead and made it clear, which is the mayor cannot appoint a current council member to fill another vacancy. So someone with 2 years left can't be appointed to fill a longer term. I don't see any mayor doing that, but it could be out there. So we went ahead and closed that door just so that no one feels like that could happen.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So tonight's vote will need to be by 2/3, which is also just the same as your normal majority because of the number of you, but me more.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I know you're new to the game, so you probably don't have a whole lot of opinion on this. But
No, it looks good though. It definitely makes sense.
All right.
All right, with that, I entertain a motion.
Move to approve charter ordinance number 41 relating to vacancies in the offices of mayor and council members.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, Deputy Madam Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Mr. Van Houten,
Yes.
Ms. Feback,
Yes.
Mr. Peel,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mayor Berkey.
Yes.
Charter ordinance number 41 passes 6-0-0.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is consider approval of donation of 4 parcels to Spring Hill Recreation Commission. And Mr. Lau, you have the floor, and Brian.
I'll be
see you in
sitting
a
out.
bit.
Yep.
If somebody can just remember to get him after we're all done with this one.
All right, I brought this before you a couple times. The last time we were here, the concept of this was approved under state law. We have to publish notice of the city's intent to lease or sell any parkland. This concerns the donation of parkland to the Recreation Commission. So we published that twice. There were no petitions filed. We are now clear to finalize that donation by quitclaim deed. As you all requested, the new donation agreement does include essentially a reversion clause back to the city. So if the Recreation Commission decides that they don't want this land at some point in the future, it'll come back to the city for us to decide what we want to do with it. So other than that, nothing has changed since the last time we talked about it, other than you can be assured that the community does not object to this.
And there's no picture in there. Can we describe the 4 parcels?
Yes, they are generally, the addresses are 900 North Washington, 850 North Washington, 309 West North Street, and then there's another parcel that kind of snakes through there that just doesn't have an address. But yeah, it's the
Is
ball
that the
fields.
parking lot portion? Or is that
It
the,
covers part of that, yeah. It's just sort of the way they're platted, there's just kind of a amorphous amoeba in there, so
so the old pool is not included in this?
I think it is.
I believe it is.
It is, okay, that's why I wanted to make sure it was.
Yeah.
It's in there, yeah.
Yeah,
Then they can deal with it, we don't have to.
Right.
yeah, it's basically that whole section over there.
It's true, I mean, if we're giving it to them, they need to deal with it. Yeah, I think this is fine, as long as comes back to us at no cost. Let them do their improvements with the ownership.
Yeah, and I think that was important to put in there. Not that they would ever would, but you never know, 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah.
You know, different leadership, possibly, you know, I'd hate for them to have the
Right.
opportunity to sell it to someone else. And so, yeah, definitely glad to have it in there to give it back to the city if they chose they didn't want it anymore. So.
Yeah. And for anyone listening that's wondering why this is a donation and not a sale, the Recreation Commission is prohibited by state law from purchasing land. So for them to come into ownership of property, it has to be donated, which is what we're doing.
And then they have like 100-year lease anyway or something.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I would have
so
loved to sell it.
they're already maintaining it, and
Yeah.
their position was, we'd like to do some more maintenance, but not if we don't own it. which
It'd
is
be nice to
fair.
see improvements over there and to have the old pool have something done with it.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's just gonna be good all around for the city, so.
Yeah, I remember when that pool was open, so it'll be nice. It's been sitting for a long time, so it'll be nice to see something done with it.
Okay.
Cool, all right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I entertain a motion.
Do I have to add all of the addresses in?
Probably.
You can just say the address is as listed in the staff report.
Okay.
Agenda review sheet.
Move to approve the donation of the following 4 parcels in the agenda review sheet to the Spring Hill Recreation Commission. I don't know what the hell it is.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. Thank you very much. Wait till he gets back here before we move on to the next item. All right, that ends formal council action at this time, and next we'll move on to a discussion item, and the first item is development fees, and Mrs. Abel, you have the floor.
Okay, well, wanted to pull up the presentation here real quick, and this is an item that I've been thinking about, talking about since I've started here at the city. We have, can I use the clicker on the, okay, perfect. Okay, so we have development fees or public improvement fees. Public improvements are streets, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, water line, anything that's going to be built associated with residential development, commercial development, anything that's going to be built by the developer and eventually taken over by the city for maintenance. So as residential developments are built, the developer is responsible for paying for and building each of those improvements. And after the developments are built, there's a 2-year maintenance period where the contractor / developer needs to maintain those improvements. After that period, then it becomes a city asset, and then it's our responsibility to maintain those. So as the development is reviewed, it goes through Pat and his process for final platting. They submit public improvement plans, and those show the construction of all the improvements. Those are reviewed by an engineer, and those are signed off, and a permit is given. The contractor goes out and constructs those improvements, and then the construction inspector is out there on site. So I'll kind of go through kind of our existing practice. So in the past, or currently, Lamprey Nearson has been our on-call engineer, and the city pays them through the on-call services agreement that we have with them to review the engineering plans and make sure that those fit industry standards, and they are in line with what we have established as our standards as well. Once the permit is issued for the contractor to go out and start building those, then the developer contracts directly with Lamprey Nearson to perform those construction inspections. So they're out there on site every day, looking at subgrade, making sure that that's compacted properly, that the curbs are installed at the height that are shown on the plans, that the asphalt is constructed with the proper lifts, all the storm sewer, sanitary sewer, all of that is constructed properly, all the pipe is embedded properly. So there's a lot that goes through that, and the construction inspectors out there most of the time during the construction. So the developer pays the consultant to perform those inspections, and that is 6% of the fee. So they're paying, and the city does not see any of that payment. That goes directly to Lamprey Nearson, and that's a separate agreement. So now that we've got the city engineer, and then I do want to make an announcement that we did hire a construction inspector. They started last week, and with the addition of myself and Cassidy Bridges, who is our construction inspector, we are in-house and ready to go to start working on some of these things. I've already started working on the development plans as they've been submitted. Anything that is a new review, I've reviewed those. Anything that is a resubmittal from a previous review that Lamprey Nearson has worked on previously, it makes sense to let them continue that until the project is approved. So our goal for this fee structure is to bring it all in-house. We want to cover the cost of my time to do the plan reviews, Cassidy's time to do the construction inspections. We want to make sure that we hire a qualified third-party construction materials testing lab to come out and pull samples of concrete, asphalt, any subgrade compaction testing, that kind of thing. We want to make sure that they're out there on site when we need them to do that testing at a certain frequency to match up with our industry standards. And we want to make sure that all of the public improvements are constructed per our standards, per industry standards. And we want to make sure that we have quality infrastructure so that Jacob and his crew can maintain quality infrastructure throughout the life of that infrastructure. So I wanted to go out and look at what other cities are doing. I did this same thing whenever I was in Parkville. We established a development fee to cover the costs. There was previously a fee that covered it somewhat, but not completely. We tried to track those hours, and we came up with a model that worked for the city at the time. So I went out to different cities, tried to concentrate on some of our neighboring cities and just other ones that I knew that had development fee structures. Some of the cities have in-house staff that can perform the plan reviews, while others have to hire a third-party consultant similar to the arrangement that we had with Lamprey Nearson. And so I've kind of outlined that, and for your purposes, I pulled out all the cities that had a percentage-based percentage-based public improvement fee. So as you can see, it ranges from anywhere from 4 to 5%. And a lot of these are our neighboring communities. A lot of these are our competition. And of course, I threw Parkville in there because I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that one. And I can talk directly about that one. So next steps, wanted to bring this to you just to start thinking about what that magical number is. Somewhere between 4 and 5% would be great, but that's ultimately going to be your decision. We're kind of looking for guidance from you guys as the discussion item tonight. Once I get a feel for where you guys want to land on that magical chart, we will come back before you in the next meeting in November with a recommendation. We'll update the ordinance. After that, we'll publish it in the newspaper, and we'll also notify the developers. We had a pre-construction meeting yesterday with the developer for a project that they're starting, and we brought up the idea of this development fee. And anything between 4 and 5% is less than what they're paying Lamprey Nearson just for the construction inspection alone. So this is actually a better discount for them. We don't have to pay consulting fees, we don't have to pay, and the 3-point multiplier, we're basically covering staff time to perform the plan reviews, to do the inspections, and let's just say we have a retaining wall that needs to have a structural inspection, we can utilize this fund to cover any of those additional inspections that we may need on a case-by-case basis. And then Glenda and her team are working on updating the schedule of fees. We will include this as one of the items on the schedule of fees when that's updated, either in December or January. And that's all I have. If you guys wanna, we can go back to the chart here and talk about where you guys would like to land. Overland Park and Olathe are included on that chart, at 5% for Overland Park and 4.5% for Olathe. So kind of let you guys discuss where you want to land, if you want to keep it the way that we've been doing it and have Lamper and Earson continue to do it with no benefit to the city, or might as well get our costs covered.
Yeah, I think this was one of the goals when we brought you in-house and also the inspector in-house was to save some of this money and put it into our spot instead of, paying it out to a third party. And so I think that was part of the whole plan of bringing it in-house. So I think it makes sense. And even if we did the 5%, there's still, like you said, there's still gonna be a savings to them. So I would be in favor of, I think 5% is fine if it's not gonna be a big hit on the developer. I think they're used to seeing that, so I don't have a problem with, matching what a lot of the cities around us are doing.
I'll say, is Lamper Nearson 6%, you said?
So Lamper and Earson, I had asked them what theirs was. I had heard that it was a flat 6%, so I asked them specifically, what is it? 6% for sanitary and storm sewer, and then any flat work is 2%. So any sidewalk ramps, that kind of thing is 2%. So I looked at the project that we just had the pre-con for yesterday. I took their bid tab and calculated it with, assuming a 4%.
If there was just a flat, yeah.
Yeah, I just did a flat 4% just for mathematical reasons and compared that with a very conservative number, and we're even lower. So at 5%, we would probably be pretty close to matching what.
So we would be flat, correct? It doesn't matter what the review is, we just charge 5.
Yeah.
I like that better anyway, but yeah, I think 5's good.
Because I think if we're picking in between 4 and 5,
Yeah.
we might as well, if it's not going to affect the developer or scare them away, we might as well put it as the highest that we can to benefit the city more.
And one of the
Still going to
comments,
save them money or break even from what they're used to.
exactly, one of the comments whenever we brought this to the developer yesterday, just as a litmus test to see, how they would react, and they're like, we work in other communities that have this same thing, so this is no different than what we're used to.
No, this kind of just makes me think of the other things we had talked about on the schedule of fees. I don't know if it was a year or two ago about raising we were way lower on a lot of things. Are we gonna address all of them kind of at one time, or are we just gonna start with this and then look at those later?
I think we addressed most of them probably a year.
Did we increase them
year and
already?
a half ago, about a year ago maybe.
We addressed a few.
Yeah, I thought it was just a couple,
Yeah,
but
we addressed.
Look at that up with Linda.
I would just say it'd be nice to kind of get it all.
They were water and sewer related, I think, is the ones I'm thinking of, that we
Yeah.
addressed a lot of like the connection fees and some of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, from an engineering perspective, there's a lot of ways that we can make sure that we cover our expenses. At the end of the day, that's
Yeah.
all we really want to do. We're not trying to make money here.
Yeah.
We just want to be responsible and stewards to our citizens. So like the land disturbance permit, I'd like to take a look at that to see if there, because that's going to require a lot more inspections. That's going to require some plan reviews.
Yeah.
And it probably costs more than $50 or whatever our current fee is. So I'd like to look at all those engineering fees
Yeah.
separate. I want to work on getting this going right now so that we can, now that we've got Cassidy and myself on board, we want to make sure that we cover those expenses. And then as we move forward, we can always work on reviewing some of those, comparing it against some of our peer cities so that we're right in line with what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. Get this kick-started pretty quick and then, but I think addressing all of them would be good now that you're here. We can kind of
Yeah.
go through and do that.
Let's do it.
The 5% meets the goals that you had showed us before of covering those costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, I went
Plus a little, I
through,
would hope.
And
Yeah.
with a little extra, I would assume, yeah.
there's a little extra because you don't know what's going to happen on a project.
Yeah.
There might be additional inspections, re-inspections, that kind of thing. whenever we were working on hiring the new inspector, I went through a calculation just to see, okay, assuming that we had about 3 developments based on a certain amount of, public infrastructure costs, how much would that bring in, and would that cover the construction inspector's salary? And more than it did. So, just in that calculation alone, which I feel like was very conservative, it just kind of proved that we needed to have a construction inspector on staff. And
Yeah, I know,
could
bringing
cover
it in,
those
we were
costs.
hoping it would cover a couple, yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Cause it's 5% of that entire project or just the engineering portion of the project?
So it's a 5% off of all the infrastructure costs. So
Okay,
the cost of the manholes, the cost of the pipe, all of the materials to put that manhole and pipe in the ground, any grading, that kind of thing. So all of those costs associated with that infrastructure, it is a flat 5%.
okay. And what would you say, like this project you were looking at, what's a rough estimate of what those costs are?
Well, so for this project, I went ahead, I wasn't sure where we were gonna land, so I went ahead and went on the low side of 4%. And so that was $69,000 was what that 4% fee, that's what we took in as a check. They did pay Lamprey Nearson a little bit of money, cause, this project was previously constructed and then they held off on doing any, it's Maplewood Valley.
Yeah,
They stopped construction because they hit rock and had to redesign, so they've already expended some. So we went ahead and took a check for like 55,000, and I think it was about 1.7 million,
okay.
something
Yeah,
like
so
that.
it's
That's
good,
one
good
project.
big chunks, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
one project pays a significant portion of
Yeah.
somebody's salary.
yeah.
Cool. No, I think we say 5. I mean, that's where I would wanna be.
Yeah.
If we see issues in the future, we can always adjust that, but why not start there, especially if it's a
I mean-
break even or a little bit less for them?
This question is for Pat. Do we see a problem with developers with this fee? I mean, I know you kind of already answered that, but just coming from
Amy?
Pat's side, you do deal with the developers every day.
No, we don't see. Thanks. No, we don't see any problems right now, and don't worry, we will definitely let you know if a developer says something or we feel like that we're getting out of line on it, so, but no, there's no problem with 5%.
Thank you.
And we can evaluate this over the next year and kind of see where we're at, try to track some of our expenses in-house and see where we land to make sure, again, we're covering those costs.
Yeah, and I would love to see like a year from now, what.
Yeah, what that
got
difference is.
Kind of like Quick Trip, when
dollars
Quick
is.
Trip went in, we were kind of guessing and being conservative how much the sales tax would bring in, and then seeing it a year later, it was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, any other questions or comments, or questions for Mrs. Abel?
Not super related. I'll bring it up. I'll talk about it later. It's fine.
Okay, great. Well, I
right.
will be back before you in November with recommendation for 5%.
Awesome.
Great,
Thank you very
thank you.
much. That ends discussion at this time, and move on to announcements and reports. I don't really have anything to announce me. Mr. Young?
I don't have any announcements or anything. One thing I wanted to bring up, kind of similar to the development, is I wasn't here last meeting, and I think we were kind of starting like a benefit district somewhere, or talking in talks of a benefit district. And so my only request on those would be, I don't know if we can, if any of the new communities that want to come in, if they're going to have a benefit district, can we require maybe some more longevity as far as like streets go, like concrete streets or things like that, to make it more worthwhile for the city to kind of do that? Or Jacob, do you have any opinion on that? Because I know you said before it's a little bit harder to work on. Not everybody has the experience on those. But from my understanding, they last quite a bit longer than asphalt.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we can absolutely, there are a number of changes we could make to our design standards, aimed at longevity, and if you want to, with different scenarios, and say,
Yeah.
this scenario, we'll go with standard A, and a different scenario is standard B.
Okay.
Anything that would add to the longevity of that infrastructure, of course, in the city's best interest long-term.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to do it on all of them, but at least on the benefit district, I think we have a little bit of like, hey, we're giving you some help here to get you going. I think we need to try to look at how we can maybe prolong some of that initial construction so that we don't have to spend as much time on it to keep them up in the first, 10 years or so. But yeah, that was the only thing I wanted to say because I wasn't here when we talked about it last meeting. So.
Mr. Van Houten,
No report.
Mr. Peel.
Spring Hill Rec's doing a big community event tomorrow night, Spooktacular, at the Spring Hill Sports Complex. It's 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Trunk or treat style event. I think we've got close to 20 vendors-ish that are gonna be there. The cops are always there. So it's always it's probably our second best attended event each year. So if you're looking for something to do, come check us out tomorrow night.
Sounds like fun. Mrs. Feebeck,
I don't have any reports.
Mr. Grant,
No report.
Mr. Massey,
No report.
Mr. Lau,
No report.
Mr. Burton, Mrs. Abel,
No report.
Deputy Madam Clerk,
No report.
Mrs. Dunn,
No report.
Mrs. Jones,
No report.
Mr. Spear.
It's a clean sweep.
Oh, wow. That's never happened before. Good job, guys. I don't think that's ever happened that I can remember. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Threw me off, bro.
Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0-0. Have a great night, everyone.